I've always been of the mind that in the perfect situation where you have a certain pedal board or certain settings on your modeler or you're recording into a DAW, a passive bass is all you need. Because if you want to make any changes, you can make it in several different places. You have an amp, you have pedals, you can set up gain boosts, you can set up EQs in your modelers if you're using that. These are all phenomenal different ways of doing some minor changes and tweaks or major changes and tweaks. You know, it could go either way. And they are easy to manage. They're easy to measure as well, so that you don't find yourself wondering how much you turn a knob on the bass. Now, I list all those things about being in an ideal situation. For most gigs, we're not really going to be in an ideal situation, which is why I sit here with an active bass. Now, I like active basses. For a while, went with no active basses. Then I had all active basses. Now I am split to have mostly passive with 2 active basses. Pretty interesting stuff. My 2 basses that have active preamps, I put the same thing in them. This is a Tone Monster, and this specifically the Tone Monster with a passive option. As of the moment, I'll only play an active bass that has this due to some issues that have happened to me in the past. This is great. Now, so here are some things I do like about active basses. Just by having active EQ, you generally get a different tone. It depends on the preamp that's in your bass, but I want to show you this bass tone difference. So that was passive, now active. I'm not sure how the recording came through, but I've played this back many times. Generally what happens when you activate a preamp is your signal gets more high end. It's not because it's boosting the high end, it's preventing the high end bleed off from capacitance of knobs and cable. That's just what happens. You either like that or you don't. For a Stingray, you like it. This is not the same kind of preamp as a regular Stingray, so it's not going to be as harsh. All right? It's not going to destroy your eardrums or anything. It's just going to give it a little bit more oomph. And I like that. And that's a good reason for me to enjoy this preamp, because this preamp doesn't bake in a lot of tone. It does have that high-end thing that happens, and then you've got some controls, and that's it. And I think as a result of that design, this is a very low power consumption preamp. It's rated well over 1,000 hours. There's some really good sounding preamps that only work for 200, 300 hours, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Is it worth it to drain more battery? Or do you want a long battery life for something that doesn't do as much? Now, I want to run a couple of little tests here for fun. Let's say you're recording and you realize your bass sounds a little thin, hence this particular bass. Let's see if we can fix that. So, bass. We're going to add a little bit of bass. Let's say 30%. That absolutely fixes the problem. Let's say you're recording and you decide you need a little bit more bite. We'll add treble. I think that did a fantastic job of both increasing the body and also giving it a little bit of bite. All right, let's have some fun with this one. Let's say you get to a live gig and you got to plug straight into the PA and you start playing and your bass is buried in the mix. Like you're like all the way down and all they have given you is just a DI box. And you're like, oh, dang, what am I going to do? So to simulate that, let's record the bass like this. So since we're buried, I'm going to turn up the bass and the treble like a lot. I'm going to crank them up all the way. That's a lot of boost. It did a good job, but the resulting tone, because I have boosted bass and treble in the frequency spectrum, is the 40 hertz is now boosted up like 12 decibels, and the 4K is boosted up 12 decibels, and none of the mid-range is boosted other than the slopes. So now you have a really scooped sounding bass. But if you're just trying to be heard in a mix, this will get you something, right? You're going to feel that low end. And if you're trying to fit in a mix with a bass, getting some low end in there is going to help. I'm not saying this is ideal, but I would take this to save me in certain situations. Now, a 3-band EQ is interesting because you're usually going to target one band of mids and add to what I just did. And that's going to result in you having lows, mids, highs. And you're going to have these interesting cutouts in two locations of your tone spectrum. And it's going to sound different than what I just did. Certain people kind of enjoy that vibe. I had seen some videos from MTD talking about Norm Stockton and some other of their players just taking their bass and just turning all the EQ knobs up. And I don't blame them because they're using Bartolinis 90% of the time. And those Bartolinis are so quiet. So they're probably just cranking everything. But they're creating a very interesting EQ curve that's not really flat. And they've probably become accustomed to the sound of it. I think it's kind of cool in some instances. And then they can tweak it. But I don't know. I would only do this out of desperation, what I've shown today. It did a pretty good job of fixing some problems. Hopefully you wouldn't find yourself needing to do this, but you know, this is what I can think of an active bass being handy for. It's also useful for cranking too loud and distorting your recording interface. It's also useful for the sound guy being very upset with you because you have messed up the mix that he made, and now you're tweaking live and you're messing up the mix. It's useful for some other things. So I don't know. Active passive for a bass is a really cool idea. Particularly just for tone reasons, you know, just to have those tonal differentiations from other basses. So let me know what you think about active basses and passive basses.